Hi, welcome back. My name's Phoebe Hutchison. I'm the author of two self-help books. The first one, Honeymooners Forever, 12-Step Marriage Survival Guide. The second one, Are You Listening? Life is Talking to You. Today, I'd really like to talk to you about anxiety. Now, anxiety is something that I've worked with for many years and I've seen a lot of manifestations. Anxiety is very different to stress, as you well know. So what are the symptoms of anxiety? What can you do to help yourself? And what can someone like myself as a counsellor do to help you? Having previously lived with panic attacks, I know how debilitating anxiety can be. I also worked for almost a year in a company as a counsellor with the long-term unemployed, and I worked with some very serious cases, some cases where people had trouble leaving the house, where people had agoraphobia, where people had claustrophobia. Just to come and sit in the office with me was incredibly hard. They would break out into a sweat. They would feel panicky. Some of them would feel like running from the room. This was where I really began to get a glimpse inside very serious anxiety. And from that, being an author, I wanted to find out, how do we heal anxiety? What is anxiety? The symptoms are very obvious. Anxiety is more than stress. Stress is becoming overwhelmed, not sleeping properly, not eating properly, obsessional thinking, certainly. But anxiety is when the body takes over from there. Now, anxiety is where you might feel sick in the stomach a lot. You might have a lot of headaches. You might feel at times that your body just takes over. That's one of the main things about anxiety. It's like your body has a mind of its own. So why does this happen? What causes anxiety? There are two main causes of anxiety. The first one is thought patterns, which obviously are triggered from the subconscious. So it's all about your life concept and your self concept, how you see life and how you see yourself and the thoughts that come from that. But as this is a program, we're constantly programming our subconscious. So if your subconscious says life is terrifying, life is scary, life it makes me nervous, life never works out, then you'll constantly get thoughts to that accord. If your subconscious programs are life is wonderful and adventure, I'm learning along the way, it's a mystery, it's a roller coaster, but it's fun, then you'll get more positive thoughts. So when I'm working with a client, and certainly for you at home, I'd really encourage you to do what I give my clients. I give them an iceberg. So it's really just here. Here at the top of the iceberg is your conscious mind, and here at the bottom is your subconscious mind. I ask my clients to write a list. Life is, life is, life is, and I am, I am. 5 for I am, and 5 for life is. So it might be life is terrifying, or I am a loser. So really getting to know 5 negatives and 5 positives for the life is and for the I ams. This is the starting point for you, and certainly a counsellor, if you're working with a counsellor, to find out what your basic programs are. So we really need to work on that. Now, I've got something in my second book, Life is Talking to You, of course. Are You Listening? Life is Talking to You is my second book. There's a little exercise in there, and it's called CBT, and it's the ABC of CBT. So I can certainly go through that if you wish. So how does it work? So I'll show you the book, and what I'll explain is that let's imagine that you see someone down the street that you know and they turn away. Very easy for you to think to yourself, they don't like me, then no one likes me. And the next thing you know, you're feeling physically connected to this reality, and it may not be a reality. So what I do in the ABC of CBT, which is cognitive behaviour therapy, is I get you to look at the activating event, then I get you to look at B, the belief, and then C, the consequence. So if your belief is they turned away, the consequence is you feeling terrible, and it's really started to make a mark on your day. But what if you challenged your belief system? You could actually change the consequence. So what if you were to think, you know what, maybe they didn't see me. You know what, maybe they were just too busy today. So cognitive behaviour therapy is a very popular go-to for many psychologists. It's certainly a very effective tool. But I want to go a little bit deeper. So the second reason for your anxiety is traumas in the subconscious. Now, I work with a thing called brain spotting, which helps relieve the traumas. Now, that is not something you can do at home. However, having an understanding of it really helps, and knowing there's about 10,000 people in the world who can do brain spotting, who can help you with your anxiety. So when I say in your subconscious, how does this work? So imagine that you, like one of my clients, went through the trauma of being in a fire. So this meant that in your subconscious there is a trauma, emotions that aren't processed because of fight and flight and adrenaline that happened at the time of the trauma. This client never processed all the emotions in the brain, so it remains there like a mental block. So every time this client got into situations at work where they felt overwhelmed, this triggered that subconscious through the vagus nerves, right through the whole body, and started a panic attack, which of course is the shooting out of adrenaline and the body going crazy, ready for fight and flight, when nothing's really happening. Very much like anxiety, the whole situation's happening without our control. So when a trauma is not processed, certainly when someone's got PTSD, when they've got acquired brain injury, when they've been in traumatic relationships, abusive relationships, maybe childhood trauma, or even a car accident, things like, and of course, an operation is a trauma to the nervous system. So these things may not be processed, and if they're not processed, then you can trigger through the vagus nerve without you even wanting or meaning to. So when I work with this client, and I work with him 3 sessions, and we were able to process that trauma through brain spotting. It's called Brain Spotting by David Grand. So we were able to process that trauma, and he was able to go back to work and have no more panic attacks. In fact, he did say he was having 1 a month instead of 1 every day or second day. So it was a huge difference. So I'd just like to work, if I may, from an article I wrote called Anxiety, When Talk Therapy is Not Enough. So the symptom of anxiety, or the symptoms, certainly are sweating, your mind is uncontrollable, racing, forgetful, it's hard to concentrate. As your adrenal glands are at full speed, you certainly may be reacting in fight and flight. You may be aggressive. Your emotions are often out of control. The panic overcomes you, and you may feel disconnected from your surroundings and dizzy, sick in the stomach, or have chest pains. Your sleep and appetite are disrupted, leaving you feeling fatigued and unwell. So it sounds like a complete nightmare. So what can you do right now to help yourself from anxiety? So the first thing I'm going to suggest to you is that you listen to your thoughts. Just try this little exercise. If I say to you that for the next 2 months, doesn't matter how much you love your job, you're going to work every day without a day off. Every day for 2 months. No day off. Imagine that reality. Now think about your body right now. Think about what's happening to your body. Are you feeling sick in the stomach? Are you feeling trapped? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Is your heart racing? That's just one sentence that I said to you that's impacted your body. Everything you say impacts your body. You are constantly changing the chemicals in your body. So watch those thoughts. I did talk before about the iceberg, your programs in your subconscious mind, getting to know what they are before you can change them. So sometimes you need to stand back and say to yourself, what's impacting my subconscious mind programs? Am I spending time with people who make me feel terrible? Am I reading things that are negative? Am I watching shows that add to my belief systems that the world is unsafe? There are many things we can constantly do that can reprogram our subconscious. And of course there's things we can do that can do it in a good way. So we really need to look at what can we do to help our thought patterns. Okay, I did mention cognitive behaviour therapy as well before, so that's a really good one to do. So we also need to look at our thoughts and say, where are we catastrophizing? Where are we having black and white thinking? Where are we generalizing? Now, catastrophizing is looking at the future event and imagining the worst case scenario. Black and white thinking is very similar, but it's having no grey. So it's all or nothing. It's black and white. This is it. So if I fail that exam, I might as well not even go to school. If I don't go well in that interview, life's over for me. So it's really taking things and just not having the grey. So I'd like to encourage you to also look after your body by exercising 3 times a week. Check with your doctor if you have to. Exercise is incredibly important. It's like an antidepressant, anti-anxiety. Why? When you exercise, you reduce cortisol. Now, cortisol is the stress hormone. So when you reduce that, you've got less chance of anxiety. Okay, so the nervous system, I like to think of an exercise session being a reset for the nervous system. So whether you do yoga, Pilates, tennis, football, gym, running, walking, swimming, it doesn't really matter. It gives the body a chance to reset that nervous system and really help you avoid anxiety. It's when people don't get that chance to reduce the cortisol that they have issues. The other part of exercise is that when you exercise, you favourably enhance the serotonin and dopamine in your brain, which is great feel-good chemicals, which is really good for warding off depression as well. And when you exercise, you get a really good boost of endorphins. Now, they are fantastic and they are so needed for our body. The next thing I'd like to suggest is give your body rest. Do you have half an hour to 2 hours a day? Just beautiful, delicious rest time. I have 9 till 11 quite often, and I love it. And I think we really, really need it. Now, eat regular meals is another thing you can do because anxiety is such a physical thing. People think it's mental, but it is the body taking over. So make sure that your blood sugar levels are staying constant, not having sugars that spike it and then drop it, but nice, good, solid meals 3 times a day, and maybe fruit or fruit and nuts for breaks is really good. Sit in the sun for at least 15 minutes a day is a really good one for helping your vitamin D and helping you really relax. So just sitting there, soaking it up and really enjoying the sun. I'd like to also encourage you to live for you. Too many people are oppressed and caged in, controlled by others. So I'd really like you, if you need any help in your relationships, go to the Honeymooners Forever series or get my book. But if you don't need any help, certainly make sure that you keep being assertive because it's so important to stay connected. So asking for help is really important with anxiety because it is a physical and mental issue. So you really need to ask for help. Just turning over this page of my article that I wrote on anxiety and just talking you through it. And what's the next thing? Stop being so hard on yourself. You didn't ask for anxiety. It happened to you. See your doctor. If you're in Australia, you can get 6 to 10 free sessions or subsidised sessions, mental health, with a psychologist. And what I naturally recommend is brain spotting or EMDR or somatic therapy. Now, these 3 things are fantastic for really getting to the core and helping the subconscious heal, which is such an important part of healing anxiety. There are a few different types of anxiety that I see in my counselling practice. One very tragic one is post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Now, this is when a client has gone through a severe trauma, which is life-death in many cases. And in that moment where they feel like their life is at risk, they can't process the traumas. So what happens in that situation, and then sometimes they have multiple events, multiple traumas, their body is constantly triggering. So those traumas are in here, day or night, this person's constantly feeling on edge. Now, a sign of post-traumatic stress disorder is nightmares. Another sign is hypervigilance, always looking around, seeing who's behind them, getting startled easily. Another sign of PTSD is recurrent images, flashbacks from the past coming up into their mind. So this person with PTSD is not very present. Their body is on. It's ready to run. It's ready to fight. One man I had with PTSD from war, he is going really well. He has had the brain spotting with me, which is available all around the world. There are 10,000 approximately brain spotting counsellors and psychologists. But this client's had that, and his relationship is so much better because he's had help. And he's been able to process these traumas and be able to have a more calm experience. He no longer yells constantly in his house. He's much calmer, and it's beautiful to see. He doesn't talk about what happened in the war, but he sits there and looks and processes, and each time I see him, he's becoming more calm and more connected in his relationship. It's absolutely beautiful, definitely. So the other part of certainly anxiety types, there is claustrophobia. Now, claustrophobia was something that I saw a lot when I worked with people with intense anxiety as a counsellor in a previous job. In claustrophobia, people are scared to be in a small space. So I had a very small room, which is not good, obviously, working with people with anxiety. And in that space, people would get the sweats. People would feel like punching walls. People would feel like running out. Their heart would go. They wouldn't be able to concentrate. So very, very scary. Another certainly type of anxiety is agoraphobia. So this is where people feel unsafe in large areas. They don't want to go to supermarkets. They don't want to go to football fields. They don't want to go to the show or markets outside. They feel very compelled to live a very structured, tight world where they don't go to those places. And I do suspect that hypervigilance is a big part of that, always looking over their shoulder. So that's a very scary part of anxiety when it's really certainly debilitating. Another part of anxiety is panic attacks. Now, a panic attack is really where your body just goes, woof, ready. The dinosaur's chasing us, but there's no dinosaur. And this can happen anywhere, anytime. And you can feel sick, overwhelmed. You can feel like just falling to the floor. You can feel dizzy. Your heart can start racing like mad. You can be confused. You can get the sweats. Your face can get flushed. And you can feel like you're dying. So the panic attack just happens sporadically, and that is when traumas aren't processed well in the subconscious. So look, I'm not going to lie. To help yourself with panic attacks, there are a lot of things you can do that I've already suggested, but I do think that brain spotting is the best. That's just me because I do brain spotting. I do also think that EMDR therapy and somatic therapy are fantastic. So if you can't have brain spotting, there are those other two options because they work with the mind and the body. It's not enough to say, I can't cope, I can't cope. We need help with the subconscious. I'd like to talk about what I do with my clients with anxiety. So I use this, which I will put up for you. So first thing I do is I say to the client, I really need you to believe in fast change. So positive thinking is really important, whether it's relationship therapy, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety. You really need focus. The second thing that I'd like to encourage you to do is to rest and help the body. Now that's about quality sleep, about eating well, really looking after that body, knowing that if your body's like this, and you're not getting enough sleep and then you're stressed, you're making it worse. So I really want you to help rest your body. So rest your body every single day. There's just no excuse. So many women out there are working after 9 o'clock at night. I'm sorry. I think 9 o'clock is time to stop. I'd like you to improve your brain chemistry is another thing. How do we do that? I'd like you to start exercising, as I've mentioned, 3 times a week, at least 20 minutes, whatever you like to do, because it's really about reducing the cortisol, the stress hormone, favourably enhancing your serotonin and your dopamine, increasing endorphins. So it's a power pack thing and it resets the nervous system because we've got to remember that anxiety is the nervous system through our whole body, from here down the vagus nerves to all the organs, and it just can happen in a second. So we really need this reset. And that's what I think. I must admit, I'm a fan of yoga and Pilates because I really think they reset the nervous system. But it doesn't matter. Exercise is exercise. So do what you feel best. The next thing I'd like you to do is change your thought patterns. Knowing that your programs, you have automatic thoughts that come from your subconscious mind. So maybe writing a list, as I've mentioned, of how you feel about life. Life is wonderful. Life is terrible. Or I am smart. Or I am useless. So going through those and identifying negative thoughts so you can change them using affirmations. So affirmations work only if you believe them. So if you feel lonely and you start saying, I'm surrounded by friends, and it starts to feel a little believable, that's great. Use it. But if you say, I am lonely, and then you say, I am surrounded by friends, and it doesn't feel believable, it's too high. It's not going to work. So you can't kid your subconscious mind. So your affirmations need to feel a little believable. So be careful. I talk about that in my second book, Are You Listening? Life is Talking to You, about making affirmations that are going to work. I'd like you to work on improving relationships. Anxiety can very easily come from poor relationships. If you're feeling trapped, overwhelmed, used, if you're being yelled at, put down, certainly all those things are going to cause anxiety. And some of the most tragic cases I've seen of post-traumatic stress disorder have come from women who've been severely abused. So work on improving your relationships. Now I've got here process subconscious traumas. Whether you do EMDR with a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a counsellor, or whether you do somatic therapy, which is called somatic experiencing, or whether you do brain spotting by David Grant. I do brain spotting. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of brain spotting because I've seen how amazing it works, but I do trust those other two therapies as well. Anyhow, lovely talking to you, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Have a lovely day.